Shelter Point is one of the most popular Canadian single malt makers in the whole country. However, did you know that they've actually gone ahead and released a budget-friendly entry-level rye whiskey that's available on shelves right now? You might not know it, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't know it, because it's nowhere to be found on their website. It's nowhere to be found on Instagram or any social media accounts. It seems to be completely anonymous, this release. However, this whiskey has launched and can be found on shelves here in British Columbia for a price of about $33 Canadian. You know I had to take a chance on a bottle at that price from Shelter Point Distillery. So today we're going to be reviewing and talking about the Regent Road Rye Whiskey. My name is Matt. This is Whiskey on the West Coast. As mentioned, Shelter Point are really known for their single malt Canadian whiskey, and maybe that's the reason that they chose to differentiate this rye whiskey release from their normal releases. Right here beside it, you've got the Shelter Point 12-year-old Canadian single malt whiskey. A whiskey I recently opened up on Canada Day this year, and it's really bloody lovely. I'm really enjoying it. I want to bring you guys a review soon of the 12. But as you can see, the bottle looks much differently, and you have Shelter Point very proudly at the front and center on the label. It's really, it actually is a beautiful bottle. And then you have right here beside it, Regent Road Rye Whiskey. I think they may have chosen to differentiate with different branding and the name to make sure that they don't confuse consumers to say, hey, this is not your typical Shelter Point product. This isn't single malt. This is rye whiskey. This is different. And the name makes sense to me because the distillery itself is located at 4650 at Regent Road in Campbell River, British Columbia on Vancouver Island. So that's where the name is coming from here, Regent Road Rye Whiskey. You can find the address on the back of the bottle. That's where I found it. And I initially assumed that this would be some rye whiskey from a parcel that, to my understanding, single casks of rye whiskey from Shelter Point in the past had come from a parcel of Alberta Distillers rye whiskey. So the distillery from Alberta that's responsible for Alberta Premium and the Alberta Premium cask strength. There were some really nice single casks that came out at cask strength that apparently were quite impressive. I assumed that this Regent Road Rye Whiskey would have just been the remnants of that parcel. However, if you actually look at the back of the label on the bottle, it clearly states distilled and bottled at the Shelter Point Distillery. So this was made at the Shelter Point Distillery. So again, I'm a little bit confused, not as to why they chose to brand it much differently than the typical Shelter Point. I'm just kind of confused why they've chosen to bury the release. Why it's just nowhere to be found on their social media accounts or even have its own social media account. Why there's nothing on the website for you to order it. Maybe it's such a small batch release that maybe they only had a certain number of casks in the warehouse. They chose to vat them all together, proof it down, bottle it, and then sell it at basically cost. Who knows? Because the price, again, the price I paid was $33 for this bottle. I've seen it as high as like 41, but the average price is $33 to $35. That's a budget bottle. That's dirt cheap, really, in the Canadian whiskey landscape. So, yeah, I'm just a little confused as to why they have been screaming from the mountaintops that, hey, we've got a budget-friendly rye whiskey for you to try that was distilled at the Shelter Point Distillery. With that, let's get to the review and see what this rye whiskey is made of. All right, the specs on this, as you know the price, $33 is what I paid. It is natural color. I don't believe it's chill filtered because I don't believe they actually have a machine to do that up at Shelter Point. So let's say it's natural color because it says so on the bottle, non-chill filtered, and it's been proofed down to 40% ABV. Why? Why 40? Why right to the floor? Maybe to get the price point as low as possible. Who knows? That seems like a strange decision to me when everything else Shelter Point makes is 46% ABV as far as I know. So again, something different from their usual bottlings, but 40% ABV, rye whiskey, distilled at Shelter Point Distillery. Here we go. On the nose, apple juice, apples, juicy frickin' apples, apple. honey drizzled apples, honey graham crackers, golden grams, I guess. If you had those as a kid like I did, man, I could go for some golden grams right now. But apples and honey and graham crackers. I mean, it's a bright nose. It's a fruity nose. It's light, to be certain, because really I'm picking up barely any spice. Like, there's a light rye cereal note here. Yeah, and there's like the lightest rye spice in this. Honey, maybe peaches. And like a light toffee. You know, I'm intrigued by this nose, and you can tell I've had quite a bit of this bottle already. It's down past the shoulders by quite a margin. The nose is actually really enjoyable. Really approachable. I've compared this nose to some other budget-friendly bottlings like the Canadian Club 12 small batch, which to me comes off much more like adhesive, acetone notes, oaky, and just like Canadian corn whiskey sort of notes. This is just coming off fruity and light, summery, and yeah, just inviting. But not what I typically think of with rye. I also compared this to Rifle Rye, and we'll talk a little bit more about that comparison on the palate here. So let's get to the palate. This is where you get a bit of that stronger rye spice, baking spice, verging on like a bit of like nutmeg or cinnamon, but it's that rye spice. But it's not peppery. It's not hot. It is that almost dessert tone of spice, and with it apples. Again, apples, apple pie, no doubt with that spice. Full on apple pie, absolutely. There actually seems to be a nice touch of oak too, especially on the finish right now. I'm picking up on at least a little bit of age on this. I don't believe, I mean, there's no age statement on this. I don't believe it's 3 years old. I believe it's older than that. Yeah. Another sip. Yeah. Maybe not the most appetizing note I can give you, but like the sensation of like flat ginger ale, and not like Canada Dry ginger ale or like a craft ginger ale. This is like a ginger ale that doesn't have, it's like it's been made without real ginger, if you know what I mean, but like PC brand ginger ale. And probably like a light butterscotch in here too. It feels like the most approachable, easy drinking rye whiskey ever. Honestly, this profiles so much differently than I'm used to for any rye whiskey. And I don't think it's the fact that it's been made in like Forsyth's copper pots, and I don't even know if that's a fact. That's just the only stills I'm aware of at Shelter Point are their Forsyth's copper pot stills. I mean, this could be a copper pot rye whiskey, I suppose. I'm just really confused because I also, to be fully upfront here, maybe I'm a bad Canadian, but I don't drink that much rye whiskey. I drink more Canadian single malt than I do rye whiskey. I did compare this to the Rifle Rye, which is mainly Canadian rye whiskey. I believe it's actually pot still rye whiskey, potentially as well, but it has an addition of Oloroso sherry, I believe, as well as a bit of Old Grandad bourbon, I believe, in the mix as well, in that 9% rule. And just so much more grip, so much more tension, and a much more powerful and robust and heavy palate on that, even though that's bottled at 42% ABV. This here is just light and approachable. This is, I mean, if you wanted to crush a whiskey, I'm not one to advocate for crushing a whiskey. Drink responsibly, take care of your health and those around you. But this is a summer friggin' slammer. This is a summer slammer, if I could say so. And I wonder if it's only here for this summer, or if it's here for another summer and another summer after that. with so little information out there about this whiskey, it really is sort of an enigma. Yeah, I'm kind of flummoxed, as I said. I don't really know how to place this, but if I'm taking into account the fact that, you know, it doesn't have the same grip or heft as most rye whiskeys I'm familiar with. It's very soft, it's very gentle, but compares favorably to other things in its price range. You know, with the again the Canadian Club 12 small batch, which isn't a rye whiskey, but I believe it's in that, you know, $30 to $35 range. Rifle Rye, I picked up my bottle for $35, but I know it usually is closer to $45 Canadian. I mean, I can't think of a reason not to have this on your shelf if you like and appreciate a lighter whiskey that's, again, just really drinkable in the summer. And this is at a price where you could use this in a cocktail, though I don't think it would necessarily show too well in a cocktail, but you could put this on ice. Oh man, I don't know. I'm enjoying this. And I'm surprised by that. I was really concerned when I saw it was bottled all the way down to 40%, because when I went to go find this, when I found this listing at a liquor store in Vancouver, it didn't have the ABV listed and there was no information online. So I didn't know if it was 46%, if it was 50%. I was disappointed to see it's 40%. And if I had anything to say, I would pay an extra probably $5 to $7 to have it at 45% or 50%. So if there's any feedback to Shelter Point here, that's what I would like, because I would probably always stock this on my shelf for that with that ABV, because I feel like there you get a lot more flavor out of it. However, this rye whiskey, rye isn't my style, but I gotta say, with the price point, I'm gonna have to give this like an 80 out of 100. Which is a good score. It's a pass. It's definitely a passing mark. I mean, I've given Macallan's lower scores than that. Yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised by this rye whiskey, and I think I'm going to enjoy this bottle as a nice light alternative in the depths of a hot summer where we're having 35-degree weather. Yeah, really impressed, and I'm not certain, again, how long this is going to be here for. How broad the distribution's going to be. What I do know is that there are some stores in BC, if you are in Canada, for instance, Strathliquor in Victoria on Vancouver Island, they have an online shop, online store. They ship across Canada. I do believe they have this in stock at a reasonable price. So if you're really interested and you had a few other bottles you had your eyes on from the West Coast here, you could possibly toss this into an order that you're shipping out east, and just have it as a cheap tack-on bottle to kind of combine your shipping with, get that shipping cost down. That's what I would do if I was looking to source this from outside of BC. But yeah, I'm gonna say well done, Shelter Point. I'm not sure why you're burying the lead with this whiskey, but I'm sure you have your reasons. And yeah, guys, if what I've described to you here sounds like something you'd be interested in, I'd say go find a bottle of this and find out for yourself. Again, word of caution, I don't drink all that much rye whiskey. If you're a big rye whiskey person, I might not be the person to give you advice on a rye. I'm much more into single malt and blended Scotch. But I've been pleasantly surprised. Well, guys, thank you for joining me on Whiskey on the West Coast. Thank you to my Patreons who continue to support me with the channel. Thank you to all of you who comment, all those who have been following the channel from the get-go. Thank you so much. We're in the middle of a move right now, and so it's a bit of chaos, but we're gonna try and keep pumping out a few videos here or there. My question for you this week is, do you have a budget-friendly rye whiskey that you would suggest, you would recommend that you always have on the shelf? I'm trying to rack my brain as to what one I would have on my shelf. I've really enjoyed the Rifle Rye, but I'm really curious to see what you guys would have to suggest. Until next time, from the West Coast, Slange.